Well, just in case you missed the exciting announcement, the dates for the 2024 Rise and Thrive Conference are officially live. You can join us in person August 16th and 17th in Topeka, Kansas for the most encouraging and empowering event of the year. Now, if you've never been to the Rise and Thrive Conference, it's more than just an event, but it's an experience where women from all walks of life connect, learn, and grow. Now, if you would like to attend, all you have to do is head to daniellejmartin.com for all the details. That's daniellejmartin.com. Share this with your ambitious girlfriends and make it a ladies' night out so we can rise and thrive together. Hey, you guys, welcome back into this special edition celebrating Women's History Month, where we uncover the stories of remarkable individuals making waves in their communities and in business. Today, we're diving into the inspiring journey of Christina Long. Now, before we get started, let me just brace yourself for what you're about to listen into. You are about to listen to a powerhouse woman who is doing big things in her community and in her business. Christina Long is more than an entrepreneur. She's a catalyst for change. She's hailing from Wichita, Kansas, and her passion for diversity, inclusion, and economic empowerment drives her work as the founder of CML Collective. It's a firm dedicated to inclusion, communication, and design. But that's not it. Her impact does not stop there. As the president and CEO of Create Campaign, Christina is committed to fostering the growth of minority-owned businesses in the Midwest, empowering urban entrepreneurs to thrive and innovate. I'm telling you right now to brace yourself. So join me as we uncover the story behind Christina Long. Welcome into Behind the Spotlight podcast, where your story matters. I'm Danielle J. Martin, your host, and I'm on a mission to empower and educate you towards your greatness. On this podcast, you'll learn ways to turn your thoughts into action. Plus, you'll also learn from individuals who will share personal experiences and actionable steps on how to create the life you desire. Now, let's dive into today's episode. What's up, you guys? This is your host, Danielle J. Martin, and you're watching the Behind the Spotlight podcast. On this series, this is where we are shedding light on powerful women who are in the community and in your backyard that you may not be aware of. So for this month's Women's History Month, we are celebrating and acknowledging some women that are near you. So Long is one of them. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
It's an honor, first of all, to have you in the show because one, you're from Wichita, Kansas. And so you had to take a little drive down here, about 2 hours, which I appreciate. Absolutely. And first of all, the reason why I wanted to have you on this show is because the moment I met you, I connected with your story. You have a journalism background, and hearing your story going into coming from journalism and then transferring or transitioning into business, now community, diversity and equity. Like, I'm like, this woman does it all. Like, I need to know who this is. But not only that, but you have multiple businesses. And I'm super excited for you to share just like your journey, how you got here. So let's like back up. Let's go to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Absolutely. So again, thank you. I am Christina Long. I am a Wichita native, lifelong Kansan. I have not moved outside of the state. I have found myself at a really interesting place in life where I am able to do what I said I always wanted to do, and that is just uplift communities of color. My journey is not typical. It is just not typical. I've had to reimagine and evolve through different careers, but all of it has built to some incredible moments, the ability to make and affect change, which I'm sure you'll try to have me dive into. It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing.
Okay, let's get into which one's first. Is it CML Collective or Create Campaign?
Well, it's actually Miss Lady.
Miss Lady. Okay, let's dive into this.
Yes. So in 2013, I decided to launch a t-shirt company. This was a part of a series of promises that I made to myself to live life at a better, grander level. And so being in communications and at that time having to exit what I felt like I was built for and made for, and that is journalism, because the industry changed. I wanted to still have a platform for positive communications. And to be honest, I was in my early 20s. I could not afford much.
Yeah.
And so at that time, I said, what's a platform that everybody sees that I could afford to do? And it was T-shirts. And so I launched a T-shirt company, Miss Lady, in 2013. And it was all about celebrating empowered women.
Yeah.
And so that was amazing. But I also sought services from the Kansas Small Business Development Center. And through their coaching, I realized people were asking me to make T-shirts, but they were also asking me to design business cards and logos and flyers. And I just kept saying yes. And we realized that I had more than a T-shirt company. So before my second anniversary in 2014, CML Collective emerged, and CML, my initials, Christina Michelle Long Collective.
I love that. So what happened during that transition for you to say, well, why did you change the name, first of all?
Great question. So I changed the name because in my reporting days, I saw a lot of Black businesses that were able to get contracts and contracting opportunities. And that made the difference for their business in terms of size, scale, and impact. And I knew if I wanted to be taken seriously, contracting with institutions and things, I shouldn't contract in the name of Miss Lady. So I changed my company name to CML Collective.
Okay, so I like that you're bringing this topic up. We're going to go down this roadway. Yes, we are. Okay, because there are a lot of businesses that, especially when they're stepping out, they want to be unique, creative. And interestingly, I just talked to this company yesterday that they want to have this really unique name for their podcast. And so, you know, it has a cuss word in it. And I automatically said that, like, hey, I support your vision. I love it. But let me just give you a heads up. If you do want to be taken seriously, I would just reconsider this. Kind of tell me from your background why it's important for people to just consider what they're putting out in branding.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a saying that says that people don't do business with companies, they do business with people. And when you think about who you want your client to be, not just for now, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you want to carry credibility into spaces. You want your company's name and your name synonymous with being excellent. And so with that consideration in mind, we can talk about being authentic and being our true selves and all of those things. And that is fantastic. But if people don't know you're authentic and your true self, if they have just the introduction and make that snap judgment of you, what does your company name say that will help enhance or detract from their first impression from you?
Exactly. Yes, I love that. And do you think it goes the same way when people put Black in their business name?
You know, that's an interesting question, particularly now. So in addition to being who I was born to be, a communications major, right? Based on studies, I also am an ethnic studies minor student. So in college, I got a minor in ethnic studies. And with that, really looking at the history of verbiage and wording as it relates to our experience as Black people, with the current state that we're in this country right now in this time frame, the rise of the term Black instead of African American, for example, is more socially acceptable. We are back in a place where we are able to be proud and be loud in terms of being prideful to be Black. With that, though, we have to be cognizant that if we are using terms of demographics, then we may be limiting or we may be pushing ourselves into just one corner of thought or perception that can potentially become overcome when people better engage and know your story, your knowledge, and also what your company is trying to impact. But again, first impressions. Do you just want to be known as a Black company or a company that just impacts Blackness? Nothing wrong with that, but be decided in that.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback because I'm always curious on just what companies are saying on the other end of that, because I know you are working with some high level profile companies, especially with Create Campaign. And I would love to dive into that. Where did that come from? How did that evolve? And how did that arise? Where did that start?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did launch my company. At the same time, my husband launched what's is called Wichita Urban Professionals. It was a young professionals organization for people of color, particularly African Americans. And During that time, we wanted to do more than a newsletter. So we ended up doing a magazine called Urban Magnate. And from that, I got introduced to Wichita business leaders. I was the managing publisher and editor of that publication. And so we were able to get in a lot of different rooms telling stories. And with entrepreneurship, I was invited to be on a group of business leaders meetings that were meeting with our Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce to look at how to activate entrepreneurship in Wichita. Now, mind you, I had started Miss Lady and then CML Collective about 2 years before joining this business group. And they asked me, what can we do to activate more Blacks in entrepreneurship? And so from my background, I said, well, let's bring them together. I mean, I knew when I went to the Kansas Small Business Development Center, I was one of the only Black people in the room. And I also knew that there's a lot of great knowledge to be had from those mentors and coaches there. And so we created a half-day forum where we brought service providers who worked with entrepreneurs together with Black entrepreneurs. And it was called the Create Campaign Forum. The words were intentional there. I wanted to create a space where Black people in particular saw themselves as more than consumers. We are creators.
Wow, that's
and
so good.
That's where the name of that effort came from. I had no idea, though, at that time, that people would be so excited about attending that event that they would call me, how do I launch and grow my business? This was great. What's next? There wasn't anything next at that time. And I realized there needed to be. And so I launched and grew Create Campaign. After CML Collective, they both tend to work together because even on the flip side with CML Collective, I was designing people's brands, but they did not have business plans. They did not have goals for growth. So at that point, it was just decoration. It needed to be strategic and intentional.
Wow. So you are now in a space where you're working with entrepreneurs on a daily basis. You have multiple programs for them, OmniCircle being one of them. So I'm super excited that we are a part of that because I was a part of that Emerge class, business class, where they teach you everything about creating a business plan, which is super important. And so speaking on the behalf of entrepreneurs, why do you think there is this barrier between entrepreneurs starting a business but not having a business plan? Like, why is there this gap for us to complete it?
You know, I don't know about what it was like for you, but growing up for me, we weren't told we could be entrepreneurs. We were told, go to school, make good grades, get a good job. And that is all fine and well. But when you're not exposed or when you don't actually see people as entrepreneurs, you see them as, I always use this example in Wichita, Miss Melody. Miss Melody going to church with her, going, to the grocery store, not recognizing Melody McCrae Miller in Wichita, Kansas. She and her family created Miller's Barbecues at that time. And these were wonderful, barbecue food items that you could go get from a restaurant. But she then, with the help of her family, entered her baked beans into the Kroger's and Dillon systems. She was an entrepreneur, but we just knew her as Miss Melody. What would have happened if we knew Miss Melody as an entrepreneur? Long ago. And so because we don't necessarily have an ongoing conversation, at least growing up, about what entrepreneurship is, how to get into it, then a lot of times when people feel either forced to become an entrepreneur, they need a side hustle, they need some extra income to stabilize their households, it becomes something that's trial by fire as opposed by doing with strategy. And so sometimes the idea of the business plan is so daunting because you're in survival mode. You're in, you know what, I'm gifted, I'm excellent, I want to just go do this. You're in passion mode. All of that needs to be anchored by strategy. And without understanding that you too belong in places that can open up access and knowledge and make these things like business plans more accommodating and more necessary, then you tend to overlook the need for them, or they become some sort of foreign document. So yeah, we've got to bridge that gap.
For sure. And I want to know too, because I'm sure many people are wondering, it's like, okay, Christina Long, you were like in the journalism world. Now you're in the business development community. It's like, I'm sure many people are wondering, how did you get there? I'm sure, was there a blueprint? Let me just ask that first. Was there a blueprint? How did you figure it out? Because I want this to be a space where we can understand more of who you are. We can sit here and read your bio all day. And I don't want to really go down that route, but I'm curious, I want to get inside your brain. How did you figure this out?
Well, I think it goes back to my parents. I grew up in a house where they created a space where education and knowledge was something that you seek and that you appreciate. And so my mom, Tina Woods, she always wanted to have a manufacturing company, but she was an accountant by trade. And so my family just loving education and knowledge. Me and my mom would spend Sunday afternoons, going through the Census Bureau data and statistics and working on portions of a business plan for a manufacturing company.
Wow.
And that was precious time, but I recognized we weren't launching. And so when I decided to do Miss Lady, it was after a lot of sessions with my mom, loving this idea of a manufacturing company, but also recognizing we don't have the capital to do a manufacturing company.
Right.
And that's where it goes into, but what could I afford? What could I do? What did I love?
Right.
And so I branched out in that regard. But a lot of it is just positioning yourself to learn. Taking what you perceive as a gap, what is a need in the community? Again, for me, I wanted our companies to have professional brand presences through professional communication.
Right.
I wanted spaces to uplift us. I was able to do that in journalism. I was the cultural affairs reporter for the Wichita Eagle for a number of years. But I tell you, when a space shows you are no longer fit for it, you have to decide, do I struggle with that or do I move from it? And it was that decision coupled with all of that experience with my mom at the dining room table and knowing that I might not know how to do a manufacturing company, but I can continue to create. I can design. I can, connect messaging with people. I'm going to go try. And then going to seek advice from the Kansas Small Business Development Center to fill in those gaps of business knowledge that I may not have had. All of that combined helped launch me into business.
That's so good. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm getting excited because I know many people wonder, right? Like, this is a beautiful story. Like, you had your mom. Some people may say, I didn't have any guidance, right? Because I come from a space where, like you said, the traditional way of thinking, the traditional way of sustaining a career or getting a career is more so like you go to school, you go to work, you get a job, and you just work your way up and climb the ladder. I never saw entrepreneurship or being a business owner in my wheelhouse at all. So it's foreign. And so I always love to give like practical steps. And so if someone is in a space of having a business idea, creating a business, and they don't have the resources, they don't know where to go, what would you tell them?
Yeah. So fortunately, the Small Business Development Centers are part of a national network. So I would definitely encourage people to go and check to see if their communities do have an SBDC, in short. They have a ton of workshops and trainings that are free. You can get access to free consulting. You do have to go through some basic courses, though, so there's a shared vocabulary, but then they have free consulting services. Make use of that. If you're in a city that has a community college or a college, university, make use of that. Libraries as well. Many libraries do have a business section, and librarians are actually not just people who sort out books, but they are navigators of knowledge. Go seek out your local public library and see what kind of resources are available in the public library. And then you can also look to the business community. I tell you this, there are a number of cities and towns that have Chamber of Commerce's or economic development organizations. Go and seek and see if they're having workshops or trainings, or if they're not, ask to sit down with some of the staff and ask who they would recommend business owners who would be willing to sit and share knowledge. I tell you what, this idea of competition and you can't go ask anybody anything, that is a falsehood as it relates to entrepreneurship. People are willing to give and share. You just willing to go and ask.
Are you looking for ways to be seen, heard, and understood? Or perhaps you're eager to cultivate your own thriving community? Well, what if I told you that I have the framework that you need to achieve your goals in just 30 days? Well, inside my online business podcasting academy, you'll learn how to elevate your message and expand your influence through podcasting. After this program, you'll experience business growth, brand clarity, and master professional interviewing skills. So join today by heading to daniellejmartin.com/DJM podcast course. Again, that's daniellejmartin.com/DJM podcast course. You can also find the link in the show notes. I hope to see you there.
Okay, so I love everything you just said. It was like a mouthful, so I'm trying to like digest. But I'm curious that, again, going back from where you come from, I love the passion. I love your dedication and commitment to this community, and not even just Wichita, but Kansas as a whole. And that's why I said that it really was an honor to, one, meet you and have this moment with you, because I know you're a busy woman and you can be doing many things. But where does that passion come from?
Yeah.
Talk to me about why are you so passionate about just seeing not only us succeed, but like everyone succeed?
Yeah. It's because I come from the corner of 19th and Ash. So in Wichita, it is a little corner. I grew up in a 600 square foot home, 5 people. And I was teased and bullied for the size of my home. It was a home where we couldn't necessarily always play outside because there was a lot of shootings in my neighborhood. But it was also a neighborhood that across my backyard was our neighbors, who the male of the household when I was growing up was one of the first Black doctors in Wichita.
Wow.
We had such a juxtaposition between love and danger, firsts in terms of African American history, good, soulful connections, but also a neighborhood that was kind of torn apart in some ways, because I was, for example, a student who was bused outside of my neighborhood 40 minutes away to go help the demographics of a predominantly white school across town. So all the students in my neighborhood were bused to different schools.
Yeah.
And so we'd be bused away from our neighborhood and come back and not have those same kind of school bonds, because we all were desegregating other schools in my lifetime. So when you grow up like that, a place where policy dollars did not hit because we did not have the property values and the household incomes to qualify as worthy for a lot of public investments, you grow up and see, okay, there's just some decisions being made about my community, my life, that are not fair.
Yeah.
And don't just, going into journalism then, don't just broadcast stories about my neighborhood as bad, because you're missing people like Dr. Bernie. You're missing people like my parents. You're missing people like, the Burrows and all of these. And so I grew up with that, and I knew that I wanted to make a change. Our neighborhoods were complicated, but they were beautiful, and they are worth celebrating. And that people in policy-making seats have no right to dictate and decide what my community is by typecasting us to just one thing. We were worthy, and I was going to make sure with any of my professional endeavors and personal endeavors, I was going to help ensure that our community got its just, because we are worthy.
Wow.
And that is not just replicated in Wichita, it's replicated
All
across
over.
communities of color. I grew up predominantly in an African-American neighborhood, but my dad went to a predominantly Hispanic Latino high school. So my dad learned Spanish, and he taught me and my sisters, and he would take us into North Wichita, so the North End, where there's a high concentration of Hispanic and Latinos, and we would celebrate with them, not just Cinco de Mayo, we were celebrating Mexican Independence Day, and all of those things. And because I saw the richness of that culture and some of the same storylines for their neighborhoods as ours, I said, oh no, the same goes for them too.
Wow. What would you say right now in this space keeps you going? A lot of people, if they were in your shoes, they would given up already. But I'm familiar with the background just because like I see the work that you and Michael do, and I know you've been in this work a little bit longer, but like I'm sure there's a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of headaches, a lot of frustrations, because as much as you are seeing things change, sometimes you're also seeing things just stay the same. And so what keeps you going? How do you maintain your mental health?
Yeah. What keeps me going is the stories of us making a difference in people's lives. It's of people saying, this business has changed my life. It's seeing the children of the entrepreneurs who we work with, like, my mama owns a store. Like, come over here and shop with my mom. Shop with my dad. It's seeing sons and daughters helping their parents, in their work. And when we talk about the change that gets made, changing the narratives for neighborhoods, policy, yes, but it also does not escape the stories of people's actual households. And when you're able to have a hand in that change, because ultimately it's them as well, we just get the privilege of serving to help those stories come about maybe more quickly.
Right.
You don't walk away. Also, I'm a believer, and I have been purposed to do this work. I didn't know it at first. I always felt like I was a space filler. Someone else would come, a chamber would come and do this work in this way. But I was encouraged and purposed by the Lord to continue to show up, and He's placed me strategically at intersections that a lot of people don't get to see, and allowed me to be surrounded by mentors and people who I'm learning the strategies in rooms that we were not supposed to be in to hear, and being able to take that with their support and apply that to our communities. It's purpose work. Mental health. It's a huge thing that we must talk about in our communities. And for myself, I was not always well in the work. As recently as last year, I fell into another depression because you work so hard and you see how people of color are stigmatized still. You also see, which a lot of people don't talk about, you get hated by your own community. The names I have been called by people who then turn around and ask for us to help. It does something. So also being a parent, being a wife, you have to carve out space from all of that to make sure that you're taking care of some of the most important people in your life, and that's your family. And at times I didn't always get that right or well, but I have made the decision that I'm going to be well in this work. I am going to carry joy. Nothing will steal my happiness anymore. There will be challenging days, but I will no longer be challenged mentally by this. And it's a decision that I've made, and I'm going to hold on to, because I did not realize that I was operating in order to get a lot of the impact in a flawed state of perfectionism. When you're trying to chase perfect, you will never be okay. I had to let it go. I had to let it go and decide to be well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm getting so emotional.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's emotional.
It is. No, I think that word's for me.
Yeah. Let me tell you something else which helped me there. And again, there are days, but I will never allow it to stretch into weeks or months, not anymore. I was part of a professional development series where I was a student, and there was a woman on there who came on and had a segment, which I was like, get back to the, how do we look at our profitability? Get back to our revenue pattern. She wants to talk about mental wellness. And
oh my gosh.
Okay, and the whole breathe in. Come on. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm breathing. Then this woman has the nerve to talk about focus on your great. And I said, okay.
Right.
And then she said, but when you're focusing on your great, you overlook your good. So we're going to deal in your good.
Yeah.
That was fine when she was talking about greatness, but I was like, why do we have to focus on good? And she talked about when we just focus on our great, we are not allowing ourselves to be good. In good, there are flaws, there are challenges that if we don't deal with, that we'll never be able to rise to great. But by seeking greatness, it is a false perception of being, of your being as a human. Because you are flawed. You do have triggers. You do have challenges. And so deal in your good and allow your good to be great.
Wow.
I was like, whoa, I had to let that sit with me for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
And now I do understand it is not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about being okay and accepting your good, because your good is great.
That's so good. Ooh, that's so good. That's so good. Okay, so let's get into this, because a lot of people think that you're just a business owner and you do all these other things, but you're also an author. Come on, check this out. This is your only book, or you have more?
No, that's my only book.
Your only book. This is gorgeous. It says For the Greater Success. Tell me about this process. And congratulations on this. I know this is not new, but still, I want to shout it out, because one, honey, let me just tell you, writing a book is not easy.
No.
Tell me about this process. I'm so curious.
Okay. Well, with all that I've done, a lot of people talked about previous to me writing the book, and even now, because I don't promote it. I bought it.
No, I'm going to be that person. I'm going to be that person that's like, oh, you got a book? Oh, yeah, we're talking about it.
Yeah.
For sure.
They were like, you've got to write the story. And I'm like, but the story is still being written. I haven't, I didn't feel like I had achieved to the point that anyone would want to read anything about what I was doing.
Yes. I feel that.
It was during one of those nights a couple of years ago, when I was just on a downhill spiral. Things were just not going well. And when I say things are not going well, it's heavy.
Right.
Because I have so many entrepreneurs who call and who are seeking, advice and assistance, and I don't always have the capacity, or my staff has the capacity to assist, now that I finally do have a staff.
Right.
it's the challenges of having space. So we were donated and gifted a bank building where my family banked when I was coming up. And that's the headquarters for Create campaign.
Wow.
But it needed to be remodeled. It was a bank, so you can't, have entrepreneurship conferences and things with a big old teller's desk in the middle. It was creating a microloan program that helped broaden the credit criteria for minority entrepreneurs, and then watching people copy it. But then also ridicule the fact that we hadn't done hundreds of loans.
Wow.
We were the architect of it. It needed time to continue to be built and to grow and to serve so we can get in the hundreds, but it was never good enough. The work was never good enough.
Wow.
And so I was sitting, that made me cry. I was sitting in my bedroom dealing with, got to get up the next day, get running, get to it for work that people continue to demean. And I was watching a Netflix show. It was just on. I hardly watch TV, but that one was on. And Representative Alexandra, she talked about, and in fact, it's at the opening of my book, I'm big enough to do this. I'm strong enough to do this. I'm mature enough to do this.
Yeah.
And it just created a flood in me that I needed to get this out. I grabbed all of my notebooks. So being a journalist, a communications person, I always take my notebooks and I jot down quotes and all those things. So I got my notebooks and I started reading from the business leaders who helped encourage me with a positive quote and affirmation. And I realized that just told part of my story. It was also my journals, where I was able to, through tears and pain, write to just release. And the combination of the two make up the book, the greater success. It chronicles my journey, and it answers the question you asked: how in the world did you get from journalism to where you are right now? It takes you through the journey. And it gives people, readers, recommendations and tips and opportunities for them to write inside of the book for their own journeys.
I love this. And can you just speak on the fact, you mentioned it earlier, but you said, I don't think that my story is done yet. It's still in the process. And I feel like a lot of people feel that way, especially when they're just starting out and they're just starting to just find their purpose and get their footing. Why would you encourage anyone to start writing right now?
Yeah. 2 reasons. Number one, Michelle Van, Wichita, and also a business leader across the state, she said, Christina, you've got to write the story as it's being written because it's a blueprint for those who are coming behind.
Yeah.
So write the story as it's being written so it can serve as a blueprint for those coming behind. That's one.
Yeah.
2, Dale Gines, who is now with the International Economic Development Council, but was with the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City. He shared, Christina, you may not have a 30,000 or a 50,000 foot view on entrepreneurship, but you got a 10,000 foot view. And if you keep going, that'll turn to a 15 and 20. And think about that point of view compared to someone who's on the ground who can't figure it out. You must. So
that's powerful too.
So for those people who are struggling with, they're not yet at the point where they feel like someone would say, oh, that's impressive.
Yeah.
You've traveled a journey for a reason.
Right.
Write it if you are so compelled. And ultimately, if you feel like you are operating in your purpose, then you have a responsibility to shine a light on what God has allowed you to do so His work can be magnified in it all through you.
Do you mind me asking how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 43.
43, honey. Look at you. You look good. You look so amazing.
Thank you.
Do you think that you are done?
No. So when coming up, I never made New Year's resolutions. I make birthday resolutions. My birthday happens to be in December. And so on the eve of my 30th birthday, when I was 29, about to turn 30, I said, if I continue to bring to life everything that I'm bringing right now, when I look ahead to the age of 40, will I be pleased with the life I'm living? And the answer was no, because I was doing good. I was trying to be great to each day, but I didn't have that end goal in mind. And so I read the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And one of the habits is begin with the end in mind.
Yes.
So I looked at 40, what needs to happen around faith, family, finances, all of these different areas, what needs to happen so I can feel accomplished? And then what would it look like if I do feel accomplished? And I don't know, are you a Janet Jackson fan?
I am.
Okay. Well, she has her album Design of a Decade, and on her album cover, her face is at peace. And I said, I want that. And so I bought a journal.
That's so good.
I bought a journal and I wrote down, I said, if it goes in this journal, then it's a promise that I make it to myself, and I deserve to keep these promises. And I started just, writing about them, little hashtag designing my decade. And designing my decade became how I changed my life.
That's so good.
So all of these things that we've talked about, the company, what I'm doing with Create campaign, all of that was part of my designing my decade. When you ask now, am I done? At 40, I was like, I've accomplished all of those things in there. There's just a couple of things I didn't get to. So Philly, I got to get to Philly to hear some.
What's in Philly?
Oh, man. When I think of Philly, I think of just good live music, Jill Scott.
Like, you want to move there?
No.
Okay.
You just want to listen to some music there. Right.
I'm like, we can't lose you now.
No, not to Philly. But, so when 40 hit, I was like, whew, that was amazing. I'm done.
Yeah.
There was no other need to design my decade. People were like, we got to do this too. It became a whole thing. And they asked me, well, are you going to go through it again, looking at 50 where you want to be? And I said, no, because I felt like that was done. I felt like now it was going more deeply into what I was able to accomplish, making even stronger and deeper roots. And so then I came up with living my legacy, because so often our legacies are celebrated when we pass away. And what would happen if you just lived in your legacy? And that was good. But I tell you what, it wasn't as focused as designing my decade. And so we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what it all leads to. But I do know, out of everything, it doesn't even need a hashtag. If you want a better life, you have the power to go make it. And the power lies here. The power lies with how you think, what you believe, and how you allow yourself to move. It does not depend on resources. Resources will come, but you could be surrounded with resources and not have the mindset to know what to do with them. You have to change your mindset, and part of changing your mindset is to understand and accept yourself as good and worthy.
Ooh, you just said that key word. Can I just say that your confidence is like contagious right now? Like, I just like feel the chills. Like, I'm just like, yes, like I could do anything in this world. No, seriously. But like you said that keyword worthy, and I want to talk about this with you because I'm curious about your perspective. But recently I learned that there's a difference between self-confidence and self-worthiness. And when I heard that the first time, I'm like, well, like if you're confident, like, shouldn't you feel worthy? But it's like, no, they're like two completely different things. And so I'm curious, like during your journey, have you ever felt that way of not feeling worthy of having the thing? And like, how do you encourage other women to take just a little bit more inventory on that? Because I feel like I'm in that space. I'm about to be 29. I know I'm like a baby, but like in March actually. So I'm super excited. I'm like waiting to get to 30. I don't know why. I'm just like, I'm just ready for this decade to be over with. But this last couple of months have put me in a space of reflection and looking at the little girl in me. And it's like, oh my gosh, so many things, Christina, are just like arising. Things that you think that you have healed from. And it's like, oh no, honey, not yet. But it's like, I'm ready to like face that little girl and say like, you know what, you are worthy. I'm curious on what you think about that.
Oh, boy.
I know, sorry to take a turn here, but I'm so curious.
Apologize. It is right on time because the joy that you're seeing from me, it's me talking to my younger self. I had designed my decade, obviously. 40 to 43 was good. I mean, so far it's been good. 42 was hard. So last year was hard. It was hard for a number of reasons, but on top of workload, the appearance of perceived success, so much so that people, again, who even look like me, began to try to bogart resources, they have enough. They have enough. While still looking at another demographic of sponsors and supporters who are like, you're not doing enough still. And then on top of that, my dad fell ill. And to transition to be a caregiver for a time, it was just a whole mental situation. But I recognize in terms of the work stuff that I was operating like the little bullied kid. And she was 13.
Wow.
I'm 42, 43.
Yeah.
People talk about you don't recognize the power, Christina, that you carry. You carry it so humbly. Again, I know who it comes from. And the Bible also says pride goes before destruction. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to be prideful, but there is a difference. I can carry what God has given and what he has provided and the work that he's allowed and purposed me to do. Mm-hmm. I've done it well, and I can claim that. And that's not pride. That's not conceit. Mm-hmm. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
And in that, the idea of worthiness. When we look at who we are, we often judge it against other people. And when we judge it against other people and their perceptions, then we don't leave space for ourselves to sit with ourselves and to understand that we are worthy. We're inherently worthy because we are here. Mm-hmm. We are inherently worthy because for believers, we are children of the Most High. And how dare we think we are not? Yeah. Because of other people's perceptions, other people's journeys, other people's misopinions about us. Mm-hmm. We have got to deal with the fact that other people's perceptions are just that. They do not make that the authentic truth of ourselves.
Right.
And to know and distinguish the difference. We are worthy because we are his. We are worthy because we are here. We are worthy because of more than our trials and our challenges, but for our successes. We are worthy if we are mothers because we have been gifted the opportunity to impart and bring life. And for those who have challenges with that, we are still worthy because we are part of a connected community and we have influence on other people. We are here. Yeah. We are worthy.
Yeah.
We are worthy. And when you carry yourself with that, when you understand life is about the good and the bad, it is about the happy and the sad. And that your work can't outrun your problems. Your work can't prevent problems. Life is truly the totality of all, the fullness of our relationships. Then there is a confidence that comes from, okay, I may not be on 100 today, but guess what? I'm going to be there tomorrow.
Right.
I may not have all the answers today, but I'm not supposed to.
Yeah.
I'm just supposed to be willing to ask.
Mm-hmm.
You got to move like that. We got to quit being victims.
Right.
We got to allow ourselves to be released from even the victimhood we place upon our own selves by not allowing ourselves to be worthy, by not allowing ourselves to move in positions we've been told to move, by not allowing ourselves to walk in the abundance that life has for us. We have got to quit being victims.
Gosh. Okay, way to just end the episode on a powerful note. I can't say anything else, but just take that with you because it was for me. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate you. And I appreciate your time. And if people want to get your book, they can. I'm going to put all of your information in the description below. In the meantime, you guys, we'll see you next time. Ooh, that was so good. That was so good. If you found value in this episode, I'd love to hear your thoughts on your key takeaways. Take a moment, download this episode, and share your feedback by leaving a review for this episode. Better yet, snap a screenshot and share it on your social media. Now, don't forget to tag me so I can personally connect with you. Your insights might just be what someone else needs. Now, let's make an impact together.